نحن هنود
इंडिया
माँ हिंदी हस्ती
मूंग हिंदियानियो
सलाम हिंदुस्तान।
We are India.
Namaskar, welcome to our series of programs on the Indian economy. Today, we're going to be discussing the resurgence of the Indian economy in the light of good Q1 results, also the potential that the economy is showing with the rapid vaccination drive that the government has launched, which is the best in the entire world. Talking us through this discussion, we have with us two eminent guests. Let me introduce you to them. Dr. Rajat Kathuria is the professor of economics and dean at the Shiv Nadar University. And Mr. D.K. Joshi is the chief economist at CRISIL. Mr. Joshi, countries around the world are accelerating their vaccination drives. How much of a morale booster to the economy would 2.5 crore vaccine doses administered in a single day on the 17th of September be?
Well, I think the vaccination picking up itself is a very positive sign. I think the 2.5 crore vaccinations on September 15th or 17th rather, I think has pushed up the average vaccination rate to around close to 8 million per day for the month of September so far. And we are getting, at this rate, we are getting closer to vaccinating the entire adult population by the year end, which is the target of the government, if this momentum is sustained. This has two important implications for growth outlook. We have seen around the world that economies that are sufficiently vaccinated, they're able to grow much faster pace. And also, I think along with the momentum of growth, they also, the growth becomes more broad-based. I mean, the services also start. From India's outlook perspective, I think the two key monitorables are, one is the severity of the third wave, and second is the vaccination, and both are related. And we have so far good news on both the fronts. I mean, the WHO believes that India may be slowly entering into a endemic stage of the pandemic, which is positive economic outlook. And second is that vaccination picking up of late, as I already mentioned. So we are on track to 9.5% GDP growth. Now, let me add a word of caution. I mean, that said, we are currently in a phase where COVID is down but not out, and there's always risk of more infections, more virulent strains, and even escaping mutations. 2.5 crore vaccines is like winning a sprint. I mean, but we need to run ahead of us, which requires 8 to 10 million doses per day on a sustained basis.
But Dr. Kathuria, some of the big cities that have already done sero surveys are showing 70 to 80%, of antibody presence in amongst the population. So, but the problem is, how long will the immunity last? I mean, there could be next year we may need to suddenly take more vaccinations. How important is it to look at this aspect, while assessing the full potential of the economy?
Exactly. I completely agree with what Mr. Joshi said a little while ago. We can't slow down the pace of the vaccinations. Even if there is seroprotection in the population and antibodies, we've been hearing, I'm not an expert, but we've been hearing news and you've been hearing news that antibody presence will decline time. Some people say 6 months, some people say 8 months. So I think the only sort of long-lasting cure of this pandemic is to ensure that you vaccinated the entire population, and to get the anti-vaxxers to have a nudge sort of for the anti-vaxxers to do some behavioral change on the anti-vaxxers, government campaign advocacy, so that they also come on board. Nobody is safe until everybody is vaccinated or until everybody is safe. So I think it's extremely important for us to vaccinate the entire population. And then we can think about, reviewing and reviving our growth. Until that happens, we will always be in a period of uncertainty when the next close down will happen, when the next lockdown will happen, and we'll have to then calibrate and navigate our way through that. But if you want the entire economy to open up, then we have to vaccinate all. That should be our first target. And I'm happy, as Mr. Joshi is saying, that the pace of vaccination has picked up.
Indeed. But when we look at the economy, Mr. Joshi, we've seen that the lockdown has prevailed over the brick and mortar economy, but the digital economy has largely held sway. It hasn't been held back to that extent. We've seen now massive booms in the stock markets. We've seen online commerce doing really well. But the question that comes to mind, is this an aberration? Because once we get back to normal, would this change? Or do you see India has adapted to a new normal?
Well, I think what pandemic did was it accentuated the underlying trends. I mean, the digitalization, etc., were anyway picking up, but they got a booster shot from the pandemic. And we have what is referred to as a K-shaped recovery. Parts of the economy are doing extremely well, parts are not. So as you rightly mentioned, technology sector has been boosted up big time. The ITS sector is doing well. Among the brick and mortar, the only segment which is doing very well is the export segment. That's because the global growth has picked up. And similarly, I think e-commerce, digital payments, all these are progressing extremely well. Now, in these segments, the job requirements have gone up, even the wages have gone up. I mean, so, and some of these trends will continue, they are irreversible. But what pandemic has done is they've pushed the pace up. The pace may not be sustained. And stock markets, of course, it's a global phenomena and is supported by extremely easy liquidity conditions across the world. But what's not doing well, I mean, that's the brick and mortar which you alluded to, is a small segment, the SME segment. The contact-based services, I mean, just take the example of schools. So many of them are closed, and I think so as a result, what happens to the staff caters to the school, and then a number of other services are also operating much below capacity.
If you look at some figures, Dr. Kathuria, the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index PMI for July was at 55.3, and it was 48.1 in June. So there is significant growth driven by new orders and exports, is what analysts say. Do you see this trend sustaining through the second quarter, which is going to come to an end in September?
So a lot of this rebound that has happened, and Mr. Joshi has mentioned one is the global demand has picked up, and therefore there's surge in exports. There's not a lot of sort of price effect or price elasticity there. It's mainly as a result of increase in income. So that's one reason why you've got a good purchasing managers index. And the other is there was a lot of pent up demand in the system. And as you opened up, as we saw the last quarter, we grew at 20%. We're not going to grow at 20% and that was because of the base effect. We'll probably grow at 7.2, 7.5%. And this will also be partly due to the base effect and partly because the economies are now opening up and there's global demand which is emerging in the system, and India is capitalizing on some of that global demand. And when you say, will this be sustained? We need to do a lot of things to get out of either the benefits of a low base and the benefits of a global economy. So what is it that we need to do? And we need to do, and we've been talking about this on your program, on other shows for such a long time, which is we need to push through some structural reforms in the system so that small and medium enterprises get access to credit, so that they're able to be connected to market, their products improve, the quality improves. I think the biggest concern in the Indian economy, which has to be targeted, and digitization will play a role, are two, I think. One is the jobs agenda. I think the jobs agenda is paramount. And, some of it might be addressed by this sort of temporary impact that the base effect has and the temporary surge in global demand. But if you want a long-lasting effect on jobs, that has to be done through structural reforms in India. And I'm happy to say some of the government has used this sort of pandemic to push through, some silently and some overtly, some sort of structural reforms. One is our jobs agenda, which will require structural, productive jobs agenda. And the other is inequality, which will require a much better social security architecture. And I think the digitization of the economy can play a huge role there.
Mr. Joshi, the 8 sectors seem to have, discounting the base effect at 25.3%, and coming from a contraction of 23.8% in the same period year-on-year last year. What do you see? Is there sufficient demand to take this further and also position India to affect some sort of changes in the global supply chains?
Well, I think there is the demand is picking up because as the economy opens up, I think there is some revenge buying that takes place. So I think as Dr. Rajat Katsuria was pointing out, the pent up demand kind of is satisfied, and that leads to a pickup. And some of the demand is also coming from the fact that some parts of the economy are doing well. I mean, the IT, ITS, etc. that I mentioned, and but one should, I think one way to look at it would be that the growth numbers, year-on-year growth numbers will look pretty good. I mean, for many sectors, and that's largely the base effect playing out. And within that, there are some good, there's some sectors which are seeing much stronger momentum and some seeing lesser momentum. Take the case of autos. I mean, so if you look at, or let's take the case of durables. I mean, if you see cars, commercial vehicles, tractors, I think these are doing extremely well, and they will, by the end of 21-22, we estimate that they will be at the 2019-20 level only. So that's I think, putting the number in context. Whereas I think the others like two-wheelers, etc., are much weaker because the people who buy them are, I think their incomes have suffered more. And RBI does point out that the consumer confidence is still quite weak. So I would that there is in some segments, I think the recovery will be sustained. In other segments, I think recovery will have to wait for the pandemic to subside, and also for some support from the government, particularly I think in the services, contact-based services segment.
Dr. Kathuria, the net tax revenue was at 4.13 lakh crores, indicating a significant growth because of both higher direct and indirect tax collections. The question is that, the government has also got to spend, and the issue is this is a time, I mean, people think in Keynesian terms where the government spends much more, not worry about the deficit. What would you say, stimulus or concessions for people to, do their business so that the tax collections also may be affected by that?
I think given India's political economy, I would support government support and government fiscal interventions in the economy. Our tax to GDP ratio has been historically very, very low compared to other countries. It hovers around 11-12%. So tax concessions have already been given. And as I'm saying, given to the corporate sector, the tax rates have already been brought down, and we did it in the last budget. And I think we've spoken that language, we've done that. Further tax concessions, if they are given, I guess, and if they are garnered mostly by the big firms, the large firms, then the political economy of India kicks in. Of course, so tax concessions should be given, should be rationalized. Tax should be rationalized. I mean, to give you an example, the telecom sector, for example, is taxed heavily because spectrum prices are very high. At the same time, they have to pay spectrum usage charges. So it makes sense to rationalize those sort of regulatory burdens that producers have to face. On the other hand, looking at the general tax rate, we've already brought it down. Going further down that route will, I think, raise political economic concerns in India. Already when it came down, they said these large concessions are going only to the big corporate. So I would root for government intervention, as DK is saying, government support to the economy. The government should spend, but where will the government get this money to spend from? That's been a huge question for the government. Fiscal deficit is hitting the frontier, as it were, or the target that the government had. So I think what the government has done makes a lot of sense. Privatization raises a lot of hackles of people, and in this environment, privatization may not be the best way to go. So the government is saying, okay, I will give you a national monetization pipeline where I'm not completely privatizing, but I'm letting the private sector run the assets of the government, be it roads, be it power, and then over time, I look at other assets. So I think this overcomes some of the political economy concerns and also will give government some amount of revenue. I think the target is somewhere around, in this fiscal, about 88,000 crores. Then it gives the government some headroom to invest.
Mr. Joshi, the UPI transactions were valued at 6.06 lakh crore rupees. This is compared to 5.47 lakh crore rupees in June. This is for July. Now, the volumes too are significantly higher. But when one goes to these shops, you see that cash is making a comeback to a large extent. Do you see that, at least for smaller purchases, do you see this affecting the real growth rate?
Preference for cash is behavioral. I mean, even in some of the rich countries which are technologically advanced like Japan and Germany, people still prefer cash despite the fact that they have other options. So some dependence on cash will come back, as we saw even after demonetization. I think during that period, we saw even everything getting sold through digital transaction. But I think my sense is that underlying trend of digitalization will continue, and it got a big boost during the pandemic time. This pace will not continue, but I think this underlying trend is here to stay. And finance and digital payments, I think they are like lubrication for the economic machinery. Eventually, rise in incomes, rise in jobs, I think these will be critical for the growth trajectory.
Indeed. Dr. Kathuria, on the demand side, you both have spoken about pent-up demand. Now, the question is that does this have inflationary tendencies when it all, comes out all of a sudden, the pent-up demand? I mean, it would have demand pull effect, wouldn't it? And would it be a short-term, medium-term, or long-term? Does it affect the input costs and then, basically cause inflation across the board?
Of course. I mean, it will have, the pent-up demand is already showing some impact on inflation. But it depends on the supply side. How quickly is the supply side going to respond? So I think the demand side has responded immediately as soon as the economy opened up. You look at the car sales, you look at automobile sales, they've picked up suddenly. And of course, there's this oil price, which is also sort of going up, which has inflationary tendency, which creeps into the rest of the economy and produces inflationary tendencies. Agriculture prices have also increased. So the risk of inflation and the rising input costs are an immediate worry, especially in the short term. But I think in the medium term, as the supply responses pick up and as global input costs go down, as oil prices go down, I think it may not be as much of a concern, but certainly in the short term, it is a concern, which is why the RBI in its monetary policy reviews, it's been advising more on the side of caution rather than reducing, although there's been notes of dissent that we should reduce the interest rates because the difference between the repo and the reverse repo rate is basically not there anymore. But I think the RBI is erring on the side of caution. And there are concerns about inflation in the short run, given the oil price situation also. And I think that is the right way to.
Mr. Joshi, targets like $400 billion for this year for exports. Does this place India on course to re-emerge as a key engine for global growth? And what kind of investments do you see this kind of setting these kind of targets? You've also already talked about exports on the brick and mortar side doing well. What kind of stimulus or what kind of an attraction for investments does this have on our economy?
Well, I think, as you rightly pointed out, exports are being fired because of global demand. I think Dr. Kathuria also pointed that out. Part of the reason why exports are doing well is also because the US ban on or trade ban on China for some textiles. So we are exporting textiles to even countries like textiles and raw materials to countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam, apart from US. Now so there's a part of the reason is opportunistic here. I mean, it's not, I think from the sustainability perspective, you have to become more competitive. And that is when you will meet these targets. I still remember, I think a couple of years back, we had set up a target of 500 billion of exports, which was never met. I mean, I think it was pushed ahead by several years. So I think the competitiveness becomes the key. As far as the investments are concerned, I think the blueprint for investments has been set by the National Investment Program of 1.4 trillion. Here, I think the public sector is doing reasonably well. I would say even during the pandemic, the state and central government investments are on track, but the private sector investment is on a weak wicket right now. And I think the reasons are clear because we still have excess capacity. If we are successful with the PLI scheme, that will attract a lot of private investment because the government is itself in incentive spending more than 2 lakh crores on that, and that will trigger private investments of close to 3 lakh crores. So overall, I think the investment scenario is yet to see a broad-based lift, but I think the government is doing its part in terms of putting
setting targets,
pushing the infrastructure capex up. I would say.
Okay. Right. A final question to you, Dr. Kathuria. In July 2021, there was surplus liquidity in the system with an average daily net absorption, which is under liquidity adjustment facility at 6.8 lakh crores against 5.7 lakh crores in June 2021. And the Forex reserves was at $620.1 billion. You're an economist. What does this mean? Does it sound like India is in a healthy position to set big targets and meet them?
Right. I think the surge in FDI, if you kind of deconstruct the surge in FDI inflows and if you look at the narrative that DK has been suggesting, a lot of those inflows, the FDI inflows, have been coming in the digital sector. And the question is, and so not so much in the brick and mortar sector, a lot of that FDI investment has been coming in the digital sector. So there's a push effect from abroad. India, of course, is a very large economy, and everybody's attracted, just like people were attracted to China. India can really sell its domestic market well, but it hasn't been able to market it as well as China was able to market it. But still, there's a push factor. Interest rates in developed mature markets in North America, in Europe, in Japan, they're at historic lows, if not negative. So there's a sort of push. These are pension funds. They want to come into India. A lot of money is going into the digital sector where exports are picking up, where there is pent up also demand. And the pandemic has given a new lease of life to these sectors. Now, the question you asked DK and as he responded, one will have to see whether this is continue or not. Of course, it brings in liquidity into the system, but that liquidity also means that it's going to fuel inflation, right? If there's a lot of liquidity in the system, it will mean that it will fuel inflation. So there is a balancing that needs to be done between sort of managing the FDI inflows and ensuring that the impact on inflation remains muted or is not very high. Because there is excess capacity, some of that is able to absorb that. But once we reach full capacity, then of course there will be even more of an impact on inflation. The point I'm making is that it is a positive. The FDI inflows into India are a positive, but they are sort of one-dimensional at the moment. We need to diversify the FDI inflows, and at the same time, the foreign exchange inflows that we've seen, we've touched 600 billion. And we have to sort of see how much of that is going to subject to volatility, how much of that can flow back immediately in case there is any disruption. Because if there is any disruption, like the taper tantrums that happened in the past, then it could have disruptive effects on the economy. So we need to be careful about how we look at these as these inflows and this liquidity. For a final point, I would reiterate what I've already said. This is an opportunity. While the rest of the world is looking at India very positively, this is an opportunity. This is a crisis where we can put our money where our mouth is and begin to introduce reforms both at the center and, much more importantly, at the state level. The PLI scheme is a very important scheme, as DK said, but we have to ensure we implement it properly. I don't think there's any problem with the scheme. If there are any issues that will arise, it will arise with the implementation, meeting the production targets, meeting the sales targets. If I cannot, will I get the money? Because I haven't been able to meet them because of genuine concerns that I've had. Because of the pandemic, lack of demand, I may not be able to meet my sales targets. So the government should be very careful how it implements the PLI scheme.
And with that, we conclude this special program on the resurgence of the Indian economy. I'd like to thank our guests, DK Joshi, Chief Economist at CRISIL, and Dr. Rajat Kathuria, Professor of Economics at SNU University. Thank you very much for being with us. Namaskar.